our number 10 spot, we have Deja Vu. At some point or another, most of us have experienced Deja Vu, and a lot of the time these experiences can be a little creepy and a little unsettling, to say the least. It's the feeling of having been there before doing the same thing, the feeling of already having experienced the present situation. It's weird. Perhaps it's just some sort of weird human phenomena that lacks an explanation, but maybe it's a sign or a signal that somewhere, perhaps in another universe, a similar situation already happened to the other you. This deja vu story reflects that quite well, as this person tells a story of a time that their deja vu saved their life. Diztronics17 on Reddit wrote in response to a prompt asking for everyone's creepiest deja vu moment, quote, "I saw a Prius on the shoulder of the Garden State Parkway. For some reason I had a memory of a Prius all of a sudden darting into traffic. As a precaution I moved over a lane and sure enough the idiot floors it into traffic without looking right where I would have been driving. Made me think." Maybe this again is just a weird human phenomena, but maybe it's a sign of something else. Something bigger. In our number 9 spot today we have The Bird. This story comes from someone who saw something weird, and it wasn't out of the corner of their eye or anything like that. They saw it right in front of them as they were directly looking at it, and as of now there doesn't really seem to be any sort of concrete explanation as to how this could have happened. They wrote, quote, "I was standing outside work having a smoke. I was looking at the bike rack and thinking about how silly it was they just placed one there and didn't bolt it down or anything. Then a bird footprint showed up. Just one footprint, like a ghost bird put just one foot down in the middle of the otherwise undisturbed snow. It happened right in front of me. I was looking exactly where it happened when it happened. Very weird. Most likely the snow just happened to collapse in that shape, but still, it was strange. Maybe the snow just collapsed, maybe it was a ghost bird, or maybe it has more to do with another universe colliding with ours. Whatever the answer really is, this story kind of gives me the chills. Maybe the birds aren't the bourgeoisie and they can just jump timelines, and that's why they're so suspicious. In our number 8 spot today we have The Ice Cream Stain. This is a strange story that someone posted online about a weird glitch in the Matrix type thing that happened to them, and it just might be an example of someone who jumped realities. They wrote, quote, "I spilled chocolate ice cream on my leg. I wiped it off and there was still a pale brown stain in the shape of the ice cream splotch. I told my mother, who said it was a birthmark. I will swear under oath that never before that moment did I have a birthmark there." Does anyone else have any weird stories like this? It's easy for us to chalk these things up to just having a wild childhood imagination, but that's also because it's an easy explanation. Maybe it's time we start asking ourselves the harder, more interesting questions. I feel like someone would remember having a birthmark. Right? In our number 7 spot today we have The Randomness. Okay, when looking for signs or signals from other universes, sometimes we have to look in the most peculiar places, and that includes some of the strange things that happen in our reality. Bizarre, seemingly random things happen here all the time, and maybe it's because we live in a weird world, or maybe it's a sign that since the idea of parallel universes means that there's a universe where basically every random thing you can think of is a reality, we just live in a universe where some of those random things are bound to happen. Like, who would have guessed that Napoleon would almost be taken out by a bunch of bunnies? Or like how people can survive the seemingly impossible, like a fall out of an airplane at over 30,000 feet without a parachute. You know, just things you hear that you can't believe. I'm sure many of you watching this have seen a video on this channel at some point that had someone say something that made you go, really? And that's what I'm talking about. Maybe this isn't the best evidence of parallel universes, but hey, everything counts. In our number 6 spot today we have The Conversation. This is a story that comes from someone who seems to have a sort of unusual talent, we'll call it. Maybe they're just super smart, maybe they can see the future, or maybe something else is going on here. They start by explaining that they have dreams about people or places they've never seen before, and then without fail a few months later they'll be with the people or in the place that they had dreamt about. They also have this ability to sing a random song while another one is playing on the radio, and then somehow, like magic, the next song that plays is the one they were just singing. They then go on to say, quote, "One super weird thing though happened in about 2012-ish. I was 19 and living at home with my parents and younger sister still. I came home from work from my job at a barbecue place and my sister says to me, 'Oh, I thought you were off today.' I'm confused because I left at 5 a.m. before anyone was awake, and I ask her, when did I say that? She says to me, like 2 hours ago in your room. She thinks I'm screwing with her, so I tell her to smell me because you can smell the barbecue sauce and smoke on me. Then she gets really creeped out and tells me she had went into my room earlier and saw me in bed with covers up to my neck and had a 15-minute conversation with me. That really creeped me out, and I never felt comfortable in that room ever again. This actually would be really weird to experience for everyone involved. Maybe this was just a weird glitch in the Matrix, or maybe something else was at play here. Whatever it is, it seems like this person has a lot of weird things happening around them. In our number 5 spot today, we have black holes. Black holes are some of the most mysterious, mystifying, and terrifying things that exist out there in the ether. They can be super small or massively large, and they are extremely dense. Their gravity is so strong that absolutely nothing can escape, and that is exactly why, coupled with the fact that one of these will turn you into spaghetti if you get too close, but that's why we know little to nothing about what lurks on the inside. Hear me out. Especially if you've seen Interstellar, great movie by the way, Matthew McConaughey is so good in it. What if black holes somehow connect us to other universes? I know it sounds insane and kind of like a silly idea, but in the end, if other universes exist and they run parallel to ours, then there really is no idea too wild or crazy, because that's one of the most insane things I can possibly think of. In our number 4 spot today, we have the hand. This is a story from someone who just might have seen a hand reach from another universe into ours. Maybe it's all just a glitch in the system, but it's an eerie story nonetheless. They wrote, quote, I was putting makeup on and from the corner of my eye I saw what looked like the shadow of a hand slap down onto my nightstand. Would have dismissed it as my brain playing tricks on me or something, but I heard it too, and it sounded like a really loud smack. It was weird, but I've experienced so many small unusual incidents like this, things randomly falling or shaking, so I guess I've become apathetic to it. That was the first time I ever actually heard the thing too though. Not only would that be pretty terrifying, but also so confusing. You wouldn't trust your mind no matter what it was telling you. You know what you saw and heard, but could it possibly be true? Maybe there's a reasonable explanation, maybe it's whoever's in charge of the simulation, and maybe it has something to do with another universe. At this point, anything is possible. In our number 3 spot today, we have space signals. There are tons and tons of signals that we detect from space every single year. Some we understand and can figure out where they're coming from and what is causing them, and some others aren't quite so clear and have stumped researchers for years. Some believe that these mysterious, unexplained signals are coming from extraterrestrials. Perhaps the signals we are receiving is from some sort of space situation that we just don't know about yet because it doesn't occur close to us here on Earth. The possibilities really are endless when we're talking about the ever-expanding universe and the unexplained things that exist within it, and that is why, just perhaps, these signals could mean something else. Maybe in another universe we are well aware of the other universes that exist parallel to that one, and we are trying to communicate with the one that we live in. Maybe the signals are being sent through black holes. Okay, maybe I'm getting a little far-fetched, but really, anything could happen. In our number 2 spot today, we have the time jump. This is a story about a location that has some weird sort of time jump. At first, everyone thought the person experiencing it was playing some kind of a prank, until others experienced it for themselves as well. They wrote, quote, had a friend who was convinced something was wrong with the area between the nearby town and his home. Or maybe it was his car. He claimed that many times he'd leave work and somehow be home 5 minutes later when it was a 15 to 20 minute drive. It was crazy. He wasn't the only one who experienced it either. Happened to a few friends that rode with him. Definitely weird stuff. I mean, listen, I hate commuting, so I wouldn't be upset by this sort of a glitch, but I would definitely be confused. I'm glad other people got to experience the weirdness of the situation too. I wonder if it had something to do with just his car and the area, because you'd think other people who drove the same roads would notice the same thing too, right? In our number 1 spot today, we have the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect began being widely recognized when people began to swear that they could remember Nelson Mandela passing away in the 1980s. This is of course weird since he actually passed away in 2013. That's a huge time discrepancy, so people were very confused. This of course is how it got the name the Mandela Effect, and basically there are two main ideas behind this theory. One is that whoever is responsible for the simulation we live in has gone back and changed some things, and the other theory applies to us in our video today, and it's the idea that in a parallel universe the things we remember happened, but then somehow we jumped into this timeline in which things happened similarly but slightly differently. Other really famous cases of the Mandela Effect are the Bernstein Bears, where some people swear it used to be spelled with the ending being S-T-E-I-N, while all copies now are spelled with S-T-A-I-N. Or the popular peanut brand called Jif, there are people who swear it used to be called Jiffy. The list just goes on. There are tons and tons of examples of the Mandela Effect, and I think most people can relate to at least one, so maybe this really is signifying something bigger going on here. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have a little bit different. One morning in 2008, Lorena woke up in a life that was similar to the one she was living when she went to sleep, but was certainly not the same. At first it was just things like her bed sheets and pajamas, but when she got to work, things began to escalate. Lorena realized that her office wasn't her office and that she worked in the same building but in a completely different department. She had never even met her boss before, so she knew this couldn't have been a moment where she just got lost or confused. When she returned home after the workday, she was met by her ex-boyfriend, only to find that he was apparently her current boyfriend. She tried to find the person that she had been dating for months, but he didn't even seem to exist in this new life and world that she now found herself in. Lorena began to seek psychiatric help because she was fearing she was having some sort of nervous breakdown, but all tests revealed that she seemed to be of sound body and mind. The strange occurrences continued when Lorena asked her family how her sister was doing. Lorena knew that her sister had recently had shoulder surgery and wanted to check in, but when she asked her family, they were baffled by her claims and insisted that there was no surgery that had taken place on anyone in the family. Lorena couldn't find any answers to her situation and was having no luck with a medical explanation either. She was convinced that she went to sleep one night and woke up in a parallel universe that was altered slightly by small decisions that she had made. Honestly, I can't really think of anything else that would cause all of these strange occurrences to happen all at once. In our number 9 spot today, we have the dream. This story starts off with the person explaining that a couple times a month when they dream, they head off to another parallel universe. They say that while in this universe, they are either in their hometown or are in Dallas, Texas. I'm not sure why, but it's their journey, not mine. They then go on to say that while they know these cities and know where everything is, something about them is just off. Like they're really run-down versions of what they're like here in this universe. The houses and businesses are run down, paint is peeling off the walls, it just generally looks like an abandoned city, even though it's occupied. So this one particular dream is what got them really confused about this alternate reality. Basically in this dream, they were living in this one house. They didn't live there in their awake reality and they had never been there before, but in this particular dream, this is where they lived. They noticed that their house was the only one on the block that had a rear garage. In the end, since they were in this rundown version of the city, they ended up coming into conflict with some bad people who were there, and they found themselves in this alternate reality getting shot. They then woke up with a really bad headache, they took some Advil and decided to look up the house that they had lived in this dream. When they did, they found that not only was it a real place, but that in this awake reality, it was also the only house on the block that had a rear garage. What do you guys think? Is this just a weird coincidence, or are their dreams taking them to an actual different reality? In our number 8 spot today, we have the Doppelganger. This story comes from someone who swears that they saw themselves, like as if they were another person walking past. They wrote, quote, "I'm from a very dry, hot state in the US and was visiting California on a trip with my wife. While eating out, we both witnessed a person that looked exactly like me. Same typical mid-fade and head dents inherited from my father, same body type. I saw the side profile from the back as they walked away from view, and it was my exact face. My wife had a direct view but could not remember directly what my face looked like, but noted that she was noticing similarities from the body to the head, even the way I walked. Couldn't believe what we saw. Any thoughts? I mean, my thoughts are that maybe this was your other self from a parallel universe, or maybe it was just your twin from right here on Earth. I mean, they say that everyone has one, right? I just can't get past how it doesn't stop at them just looking alike though, like how they act and walk as well. In our number 7 spot today we have the boss swap. Okay, this story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP giving us a little context and telling us that they work at a small processing plant in Texas, that they're 22 years old, and that they have been working there for about 4 months now. At the plant, they usually help the truck drivers with paperwork and inspections, and since most of the offices in the building have windows, from their office they can see the production line and they can see clearly into their boss's office and their supervisor's office, which are close together. So basically one day at work they hear the bell ring and they go to help the person at the door. They then write, quote, "As I got up, I could clearly see my supervisor working on some bill of landings. I get to the door that leads to the shipping area, the driver lets me know why he is here, and I go back inside, head to my office to get the bills for him, and head outside so he can sign them. As of now, everything is normal, but things are about to take a huge turn. As I walk through the shipping door, I have a clear view of my supervisor. It's very normal for me to hand him the signed bills, and I'm walking towards his office. I can clearly see him working on the BOLs. As I get closer to the door of his office, there's a spot outside of his office where you can't see at all into the inside, and then as I open the door, he wasn't there anymore. Instead, I come to find a lady in her 50s, black hair, and about 5'9". I screamed WTF, and she looks at me in confusion and asks me what's wrong. I explain the situation to her. She seems perplexed by the story, but lets me know that she has been in this office all of the time, that Juan was never my supervisor, and she has been the supervisor for years. Now, I remember clearly when I first started working, Juan was presented as my supervisor. His name was on the door of his office, and him and I were getting along very well. I've asked everyone here at my company and they have all said the same thing. Rosie has been supervisor for years. I guess I switched universes because now even Juan's name isn't on his door and he barely speaks to me. I truly have no idea what could have happened here, but all I know is that basically having it happen in front of your eyes would have been so confusing. In our number 6 spot today we have The Sound. This story comes from Reddit and it starts off with the OP stating that when they were 8 years old they were in a car accident and they believed that they died. They then go on to write, quote, "There was this sound, a note playing non-stop. It's similar to the sound of the machine when you flatline, but it was more instrumental. I've never forgotten, and when I asked my family they said we were in an accident, just not in the place I remember. Is it possible to die and cross over to an alternate parallel world? That sound though, it felt like it was telling me to let go, but I could not." This story definitely had me intrigued, but what got me hooked even further was the top comment on the post, which read, quote, "Quantum immortality is what people are calling it. Others have experienced this too. You just end up in a slightly different world." Quantum immortality is something that I certainly had never heard of before, but it truly is quite an interesting and fascinating concept. What do you guys think? Is something else, something bigger at play here? In our number 5 spot today we have Double Moms. This story comes from Reddit and it actually had my mind boggled when I read it, so I had to include it today too. They wrote, quote, "Back in 2012 I was staying with my mom for the last couple months of my pregnancy. She always left for work at about 7 a.m. and would wake me up while she was getting ready. This particular morning was the same thing. I'd see her out and lock the deadbolt behind her. I went into her room to watch my normal show as usual. I was watching TV at least 30 minutes before I had to use the restroom again. While I'm doing just that, my mom opened the door on me, stared at me for 3 to 4 seconds, and then closed the door. Within the time it took me to get up and wash my hands, she was gone. The deadbolt was still locked and her car wasn't in the driveway. I called to see where she was and she told me she was just pulling into work. Now today if I ask her about it, she doesn't recall ever telling me about it. What happened that day?" Honestly, I have no answer as to what could have possibly happened that day, but it all sounds very weird and unsettling, to say the least. In our number 4 spot today we have The Past Life. This is a story about a feeling someone has had for most of their life, and that is the feeling that they had previously lived another life in which they were a father, despite them only being a kid at the time of beginning to have this feeling. They say, quote, "I remember being around 40 years old with a wife and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and then one day I just woke up as a child and my past was all just a big blur with random memories that would come to me here or there. It made no sense. My parents said that I used to tell stories about when I was a dad and they would just laugh it off and be like, oh, that's just your imagination. But deep down I genuinely did have these strange memories of a past life. They then go on to talk about how a trip to Disney World with their family left them even more confused, as they had memories of their other family and them at Disney World despite them being only 4 years old at the time. They could remember where things were, where certain rides were, and they were able to show their family how to get around. In the end they wrote, quote, after a while I stopped telling these stories of when I was a dad because my siblings would always make fun of me for it. Eventually I just started going on with my life and haven't thought much about it since then. Although I wish I did, because the memories back then were so much more vivid and real than they are now. Does anybody have any similar stories? Does this ring any bells for anyone? I know this might sound stupid, but I genuinely am just interested if anyone else has experienced something like this. I don't know. I don't think it sounds stupid, I just wonder what it could all possibly mean. In our number 3 spot today we have the Inventors. Okay, this story is about a disappearance that is said to have happened under some extremely suspicious circumstances. Basically, an inventor named William Cantello was working on a new invention that was said to be a rapid-firing machine gun. One day he was ready to head out and sell the idea, so he told his sons he was going to market to sell it, and he set off, but sadly this was the last time anyone saw him. Investigations by authorities and private investigators turned up little to nothing. Some suggested that perhaps he had gone to America, but there was no record or anything that could possibly prove this theory. The case went cold, but the plot began to thicken about 20 years later when an American man named Hiram Maxim invented a rapid-firing machine gun that he called the Maxim gun. The invention, however, wasn't the only similar thing to William. In fact, Hiram bore an uncanny resemblance to William, so much so that William's sons actually mistook him for their father. If all of this wasn't bizarre enough, in an autobiography of Hiram's he spoke about how there was a man who was impersonating him and how he had been dealing with the effects of being mistaken for William for quite a while. Were these two the same people but in different realities? What other possible answers could there be for this very, very strange mystery? In our number 2 spot today we have the Little Sister. Okay, this is a story that might be a parallel universe example, or maybe it's some sort of time slip, or maybe it's some other totally unexplainable thing. They wrote, quote, this is all true, it still makes me confused. I was 5 or 6 years old, it was Christmas Eve. The whole family was gathered at my grandmother's house. The children slept in an upstairs bedroom while waiting for midnight to eat and unwrap the presents. All of the lights were on in the house except the bedroom lights. The parents had left the bedroom door open so that we could hear them and get some light. I remember my 2 cousins asleep. We were in the same bed. I couldn't sleep. At one point I saw a woman standing in the doorway. She was tall and thin, fair complexion, platinum blonde hair, bobbed, a bright red lipstick. She leaned into the door opening to take a look. I'd never seen this woman, but I thought maybe she was a friend of the family. The same night I told my mother about it and she told me that she had never seen this woman. I always found this moment weird, but I told myself that I had only dreamed it. Except that 4 to 5 years later, my little sister was born. Today she is 20 years old and looks exactly the same as the woman I saw. My grandmother still lives in the same place. I have never seen this woman visiting my family again. I wonder if there wasn't a glitch that caused 2 temporalities to overlap. The explanation for the dream is the most logical, and the look of my little sister, which matches that of the woman I saw, could be a fluke. I just have a weird feeling about it. In our number 1 spot today we have Memories. This story starts off with the storyteller explaining that when they were 7 years old they had a brain injury that they needed to have surgery for, but they remember for some reason being able to spectate the entire surgery as if it wasn't happening to them. At the time, since they were a child, they just assumed this was normal, that, quote, the gas gives you a spectate option. As their life progresses on, they begin to realize that they have memories from really early on in their life, like being able to recall details of family trips that they were on when they were just 2 years old and hadn't really seen pictures of. This is all interesting to say the least, but this is where things take a turn. They then go on to explain that in their late teens, early 20s, they start having more memories, but these ones aren't their own. They write, quote, "I was hanging out with my family when my aunt mentioned something about a server being so grateful for the tip they had left when they'd gone out for dinner the night before. I responded by saying something like, 'Oh yeah, I was living off of tips when I was a waitress.' Everyone stared at me for a second and started laughing, thinking I was joking. I have real memories of being a struggling, starving waitress at a crappy pub. I then realized that I've only ever worked in offices after university and my family is well off. I would never have been struggling. Recently I was video chatting with my sister when I asked her if she remembered our friend D and told her how much I miss him because he's fully dead. He is not. She started sending me screenshots of his social media pages. He's a dad now. I also remember two of our other friends being brother and sister. We'd spent our teen years visiting each other's houses. Their mother picked me and her up from ballet a few times, with both of them in the car, both calling her mom, both in all family pictures. Nope, they're not related and barely know each other. I'm starting to feel insane. I have random memories that are definitely not mine, and it doesn't make sense. I honestly don't know what to think of this story, but it really is captivating. I can't imagine what experiencing all of that would be like, and I wonder what exactly is going on here."